All right, confession time. I'd been playing guitar for quite some time before I really started to expand my chord vocabulary. Up until that point, I just kind of got by with the basic cowboy chord shapes, and then of course the almighty power chord shape. And yeah, I probably knew a bar chord shape or two, but honestly, I could never get all the strings to sound all that great at the same time. So I pretty much stayed away from those and just powered through the root fifth chords. And then I heard Keb Mo playing some acoustic blues on his first album, and I could hear a lot of chords happening that I did not know. And it was really frustrating that I'd been playing for quite some time and did not know how to make these sounds. So I started studying a little bit more and more about chords, and luckily, about the same time, my good buddy William gave me a key to unlock a lot of the chords. I'm going to show you that today, so let's get into it. We're going to get started by having a look at a fifth string rooted bar chord. This is a D major chord, perhaps one you're already familiar with. It's coming from the A shape. Just refinger it, make it movable. And that's coming right out of the caged system. And it's made up of three very important intervals with respect to D, our root. That's the 1, 2, 3. Is in there. That's an F sharp. I'll show you where it is in just a second. The 4 is not in there. The 5th, though, is A, and it is in there. 6 is not in there. 7th is not in there yet. And then we're back to the root. So what we have, though, are those tones, those three important tones. The root, the 5th, A. There's the root again, actually an octave here. And then here is the F sharp for that major third. So this really consists of the three tones we need to make up a D major. Now, we can take this and turn it into a D major 7 pretty quickly. And when you think about it, all we need is to do something to get a 7 in there, right? And if you know the major scale, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. That's the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we need that note in there, one down from the octave, right? So what I want to do is refinger this chord to get that note on the 3rd string down. But I don't want to change anything else. I need to keep these two notes on the 7th fret. So now I've changed my chord from a D major to a D major 7. Nice chord. Definitely pretty interesting. And just a little spicier than the plain D major. Then we can keep going again and move down on that interval one more time to a flat 7. So that's a major 7. Let's make it a flat 7. And guess what? We got a pretty cool bluesy chord there, a D7 or D dominant 7. All right, so far we've just walked down on the 3rd string from the octave to the major 7, another half step down to the dominant 7. All right, now the cool thing is that we can do the same thing with a set of chords based in the minor tonality. But let's first go back to our major and let's make this into a D minor chord. Well, to make a minor chord, instead of a root 3rd and a 5th, we need a root and a flat or a minor 3rd. So that's a half step lower. So remember, the 3rd is here. We've got to lower it by a half step, so we need to drop it there. That's what makes this a minor. And we don't want to move any of the other tones. So we are going to have to refinger it to drop down from the F sharp to the F on the 2nd string. All right, now cool thing is we can keep going. We can take this from a D minor and we can drop down to a D minor 7, another very important chord shape that you don't need to know. And all you got to do here is just pick up the little finger, drop that down to a flat 7, and you've got a D minor 7. So D, D minor 7. All right, so far so good, but we can keep going and get at least 2 more chord shapes. And these might be a mouthful. They might sound like something that you wouldn't use, but trust me, they're really cool in acoustic blues, and they're part of what kind of grabbed my ear when I was listening to that acoustic blues from some Keb Mo tunes. And so if we go back to our D minor 7, we can take this and create a D minor 7 flat 5. It's a mouthful for sure. Sometimes it's called a D half diminished. But for right now, let's call it that D minor 7 flat 5 because it really tells us what we need to do next to get it. So if this is a D minor 7 and we need a D minor 7 flat 5, what do you think we're going to do? We're going to take that 5th and drop it down a half step, right? Now to do that, I'm going to refinger, and it's going to look like this. Or you could even finger it this way for a little more stability. This is the way I like to play it most of the time, but that gets us there, right? We traveled from D major to D minor 7, drop that, and we've got the D minor 7 flat 5, no matter how you finger it. And to me, there's some magic in all of this, and it's what helped this click for me is that usually you just take something that you know really well, and hopefully you know the major chord shapes really well, and you just start tweaking them, and you get different sounds, particularly when you move from, say, major to minor, right? Or anything to that dominant, because those notes really stand out in the chord. And then, of course, you can get crazy with it, and we start moving into half diminished. All right. Now there's one more chord shape. If we've done half diminished, what's next? So it's going to be the fully diminished. And we did talk about this in a previous lesson, but what we need to do to get into our fully diminished chord is flatten that 7th one more time. So we actually have a double flat 7 here. So we're going to take this note, which is a C note, and we're going to drop it down. And to do that, we're going to refinger just to get it. If you really pay attention on what's happening on the string with the one interval that you're trying to change, to me it helps isolate what's happening, and it helps you understand a bit more about what's happening inside the chord with the intervals, with the harmony that's going on. At least it did for me. This was really powerful when I realized that, a D could be played in all these different qualities, and I could get all of these different sounds basically just structured around something that I really already knew, right? So let's recap. From here, we know 5th string root, we've got D major, we've got D major 7, we've got D dominant 7, we've got D minor 7, D minor 7 flat 5, and then finally, the D diminished 7. All right. Now, the cool thing is you can do all of this on the 6th string root as well. Let's switch to A so we can stay right here in the middle of the fretboard. We've got an A major, big bar chord here. And then if we want to get a major 7, we're going to do just like we did before on the 5th string. We're going to find the intervals, so it pays to know what is happening in this bar chord shape. And what we've got going on there is we've got the root on the 6th string, 5th on the 5th string. That's the perfect 5th interval. Then we've got an octave, major 3rd, 5th, and an octave. All right, so root. So what we need to do is take the octave, lower it a half step, and we get a major 7th. I'm going to focus on the lower 4 strings here in this part. All right. Very cool. So now we've got an A major 7 rooted on the 6th string. All right, we can keep going and flatten that 7 one more time, and we get a flat 7 interval, and we get this, an A7. So we've got an A7, a major 7, and then we've got a dominant 7. So it's kind of in the major family, but let's do what we did before in the minor chord family. So here's major. All we got to do to make this minor is pick up this finger. And there's our minor 3rd. So major, minor. Just a half step away. And then we can pick up the little finger to drop the octave down to the flat 7. And we get an A minor 7. Really cool chord. And you might see people play it this way. I like to. It's kind of a crazy grip at first, but at some point it feels so comfortable. But for right now, we've got that. And then what we're going to do is drop down and try to play an A minor 7. Got that already, flat 5. So drop that 5th down. And there it is. Hopefully that makes sense. Whereas if you didn't know anything about how these chords are structured or laid out or how the tones kind of fit together on the fretboard, and somebody said play an A minor 7 flat 5, you might go, go play it yourself. But here what we could do is kind of attach it to something we already know. You can figure it out. We've got our A minor 7, lower that 5th, we've got an A minor 7 flat 5. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to drop that 7th one more to get the A fully diminished. So far on the minor chords, we've moved down on the 4th string from the 7th fret down to the 5th fret to give us the A minor 7. Then we move down with the 5th to get that E flat in there to give us our A minor 7 flat 5. Now if we want to move down to the A fully diminished, we have to take the flat 7 down to a double flat 7. Well, here's the flat 7, so that's the note that we're going to need. Root stays where it is, flat 5th stays where it is, although I'm going to play it with a different finger. And then we've got the double flat 7 here. Here's the octave, here's the 7, here's the flat 7, here's the double flat 7. All right, and fingering this so that I can play it for you. We've got this on the bottom 4 strings. All right, let's think about this, because we now know a whole bunch of chord shapes rooted on the 5th string and a whole bunch of chord shapes rooted on the 6th string. And yeah, there's a couple of them that you can play with some different voicings, like I mentioned, with this chord voicing of, say, the A minor 7. You can find something that's probably a little bit easier to play when it comes to that diminished 7 chord as well. But I want you to see these tones and how we're really able to just kind of move one tone and we get an entirely different chord. One that may or may not work with what you're trying to go for, but the idea is to learn these so that you have some options, and so that if someone's talking about a diminished 7 chord, you can figure it out. Maybe you don't know it right away, just like you probably didn't know where C7 was until you learned it. And once you learn it, once you have it under your fingers, it then becomes a tool that you can use, whether you're just chucking along and kind of improvising some rhythm stuff, or even composing. This becomes really helpful in those situations. So if I'm keeping track right, that's 14 different chord voicings, 7 on the 5th string root, and then another 7 on the 6th string root. And I would highly recommend that you take some time. Just forget about metronomes, forget about trying to practice a piece of music. I want you to see how these chords are built, really get into the structure of them. And to me, nothing helped me quite like doing that and just moving a tone around. I know this is a lot, but to me, it really helps to ground yourself in something that you probably already know, and then start changing things at the margins to pick up these new chord shapes and chord voicings. It was what really helped me to get this stuff under my fingers and give me the options in my playing, and I think it can do the same for you. That's it for this lesson. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube and come on back, because I got another lesson coming out every single Tuesday. If you want to check out the next video, you can click or tap right over there. I'll see you over there, and until then, practice smart and play on.